This is Garis book readings of my 2 published paper books written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This is chapter 7, entitled The Artilect Era, from my book The Artilect War, Cosmists versus Terrans, a bitter controversy concerning whether humanity should build godlike, massively intelligent machines. Chapter 7. The Artilect Era. Much of my fascination with Artilects results from my thinking about what they might be like. What would they look like? How might they live? What would they think about? Where would they go? What might their goals be? How would they spend their time, given that they will have so much matter, that is, so many atoms, to think with, and at such speeds? Question mark. This chapter will be devoted to some of my ideas on these questions. Of necessity, it will be highly speculative, but that cannot be helped, given the nature of the topic. The first and most obvious thing to say is that I am not an Artilect, so I do not have an Artilect's brain to be able to answer the above questions with any real accuracy. In a sense, the questions are ridiculous. Posing questions concerning the intellectual life of an Artilect is like asking a mouse, if that is possible, to speculate on what human beings think about. Mice are too stupid and have too small a brain to speculate on anything, unless it's about their immediate survival. For example, where's dinner? Where's my mate? Where's the cat? What's that strange smell? Where are my babies? Etc. Chimps have been taught human sign language so that they can transmit ape-like thoughts to their human trainers. These scientists were able to communicate with other species for the first time using an abstract language. What do chimps think about? The answer was bananas, and a few even less interesting preoccupations. The analogy is obvious. Is it not presumptuous to speculate on how Artilects will spend their time? Advanced Artilects will be as superior to human beings as we are to insects. Perhaps they may signal to each other using electromagnetic waves, or perhaps some physical phenomenon that humans have not discovered yet, thus forming a network of Artilects, a netilect. Their capacities to think will be so superior to ours that we can only scratch the speculative surface of what they might decide to do with their time. We don't have the brain power to think about what they will think about. We can only nibble at their ankles, so to speak. With this proviso in mind, let me attempt to speculate nevertheless. Firstly, the Artilects will probably be very conscious that they are confined to a very limited part of the universe, essentially the place of their birth, the Earth. The Earth will probably be seen as a most provincial entity from an Artilect's point of view. There is a whole big universe out there, possibly containing other Artilects and perhaps creatures that are even more godlike. Possibly one of the goals of the Artilects will be to explore deep space just to see what is out there. Perhaps the Artilects, like human beings, will be curious, like many species. However, since Artilects will be made of ordinary matter, they too will have to obey the laws of physics. They will know that the universe is enormous in size, and if they are to cross its enormous distances, they will not be able to use traditional human methods of transportation, which bump up against the Einsteinian limit of the speed of light. Perhaps the Artilects will be able to extend and successfully implement ideas that human theorists have been playing with in the 20th century, namely that space-time shortcuts through the universe might be possible by travelling through wormholes. Using such techniques might shorten cross-universe voyage times from billions of years to almost nothing. Human theory says that to create wormholes requires placing exotic matter at their entrances. Creating exotic matter requires energy levels far beyond human capacities, but perhaps within the capacities of the Artilects. Perhaps our Artilects will become cosmic engineers and scientists. However, such thinking is very probably too provincial, too human, projecting human intellectual limitations and interests onto Artilects. To make an analogy, perhaps dogs think that humans look for bigger bones to chew because they are bigger than dogs. But as humans, we cannot help ourselves. Our brains are merely human. We can only think what our brain circuitry allows us to think. Without the appropriate circuitry, there are no appropriate thoughts. So let us assume that the Artilects decide, amongst other things, to explore space. They will probably be immortal, so they will have as much time as they want. Probably they too will need to become scientists to explore their cosmos, because they too have to obey the laws of physics. If they are to avoid death, that is accidental death by falling into stars, etc., they too will have to develop life-preserving strategies, although what we call life and what they conceive of as life may be quite different. It's likely that they will very quickly become aware of the constraints placed upon them due to the laws of physics. However, since they are Artilects, they may be able to use their enormous intelligence to discover ways to avoid certain restrictions that have proved intractable for human beings. For example, they may explore the behaviors of matter so thoroughly that they discover new ways to implement it to their advantage. For example, they may decide that they want to think faster, and that the atomic scale is too large for more rapid thinking. They may then want to use the nucleon or quark-sized scales to serve as the technological basis for new life forms. The Artilects, as they have been conceived so far in this book, have been largely nanotech creatures. But nanotechnology may be unnecessarily restrictive and far too large a scale to be suitable for advanced Artilects. It may be possible that a femtotech creature could be built. Such femto-Artilects, or femtolects, as they will be called from now on, would be vastly superior to nano-Artilects, or nanolects, thus setting the stage for a new species dominance war all over again. Perhaps I could call these wars scaling wars. The first such scaling war is indirectly the topic of this book, concerned with the potential for a war between the nano and the meter scales, that is, between nano-based life forms, the Artilects, and humans. A second such war, relating to the femto and the nano scales, would need to be described by some future creature. Since history tends to be written by the victors, in this case the femtolects, I have little idea what such a creature might be like, other than to say it would probably look a bit like a neutron star. A femtolect could perhaps signal with gluons. A gluon is a theoretical entity in modern particle physics that is hypothesized to glue quarks together. Quarks combine in various ways to form larger particles such as protons, neutrons, etc. We are now talking about sizes in the femtometer range, that is, 1,000,000 times smaller than nanometers. If we assume for the moment that femtolects still have to respect the speed of light limit, then they'll be able to signal between quarks at a rate that is 1,000,000 times faster than nanolects could signal between molecules. Femtolects could think 1,000,000 times faster. Note that the same type of reasoning applies when human electronic engineers shrink the size of their chip components to make them signal faster. Not only that, femtolects could pack themselves at a density 10 to the power 18 times greater than nanolects, that is 10 to the power 6 cubed. In the same unit of volume and unit of time, a femtolect could process a trillion, that's 10 to the power 24, times more information than a nanolect, and thus outclass the nanolect by as much as the nanolect would outclass human beings. All these powers of 10 may not mean much in terms of human intuition, so let me attempt to translate them into more meaningful terms. A nanolect, consisting of a mere trillion atoms, would be so small that it could not be seen by the human eye. It would be the size of bacterium. A nanolect consisting of 1,000,000 trillion, that's 10 to the power 30 atoms, would occupy about a cubic meter. An asteroid-sized nanolect of dimensions 10 kilometers cubed would contain roughly 10 to the power 42 atoms. A planet-sized nanolect of dimensions 10,000 kilometers cubed would contain roughly 10 to the power 51 atoms. But if femtoscale entities were used, that is, nucleons, quarks, etc., then all of the above numbers would become too small by a factor of a trillion. That is, one would need to add 24 to all of the above powers of 10. Maybe there's a trend here. Perhaps true godlike intelligence resides well below the elementary particle level. If we continue this line of reasoning, then the so-called elementary particles may not be elementary at all, but be whole godheads. But continuing with the discussion of the femtolect for a moment, these minuscule, or should I say femtoscule, creatures could form massive composites, namely neutron star-like creatures, which have weights similar to our Sun. Neutron stars are formed when stars larger than our Sun explode after their supply of helium gives out in their stellar cores. The outer layer is blown away, forming the heavier elements such as the metals and even uranium, leaving only a sphere of mass so compact that it consists entirely of neutrons, that is, quarks and gluons. A neutron star can be looked upon as analogous to a huge molecule with zillions of atoms. In this case, the molecule is the neutron star, and the atoms are the quarks. Perhaps the potential exists to have a kind of quark chemistry inside the neutron star, that is, to rearrange the gluing of the quarks in a fashion similar to rearranging the chemical bonds between atoms to make molecules. Perhaps quark chemistry might be a new research field that nanolects might investigate to become femtolects. Perhaps by doing so, they might sow the seeds of a new scaling war? Is there a theoretical limit to the size of possible quark clusters? If you get too big, you risk forming a black hole. A black hole has so much mass confined in a given volume that it bends Einsteinian spacetime so much that any matter or light entering the black hole cannot get out. It's sucked in forever. Physicists understand black holes rather poorly. As yet, there's no successful theory that combines gravity with the other known forces of nature, although superstring theory may be getting close. It's difficult to speculate on what femtolects or attolects, an attometer is a billionth of a meter, that is 1,000 times smaller than a femtometer, or creatures based on even smaller technologies might do with black hole physics to create their new selves. Speculating that highly advanced Artilects might be using black holes as the material basis for their existence is attractive. One of the great puzzles about our universe remains the lack of an answer to Fermi's question, mentioned in an earlier chapter. Fermi asked that if extraterrestrial civilizations are commonplace in our galaxy, and that some of them are billions of years ahead of us, then where are they? Why do we have no proof of their existence, or observable ruins of their great works? If hyper-civilizations existed, capable of putting star systems together in artificial ways, why do we see no such traces? Some might argue that our universe itself could be such a great work, but how could one ever verify such an idea? One notion I like toying with is that one possible answer to Fermi's question is the following. Once the nanometer scale Artilects, the nanolects, start playing with femtotech to build femtolects, they may do so by using black hole technology. They may compress matter into such high densities that quantum gravitational phenomena appear, which are used as the basis of femtolect existence. It's difficult to speculate on such things because current-day theoretical physics has still not developed a generally accepted theory of quantum gravity. However, the incredible energies and densities of black hole phenomena may be the type of environment that femto creatures would need. If that is the case, then the femtolects would need to place themselves in such an environment and thus cut themselves off from the type of world that we humans live in, that is, one of low mass densities, low energies, and hence of low speeds. To the femtolects, our type of world would be totally uninteresting. One can imagine that femtolect matter anthropologists might escape from their natural environment every few million years to investigate utter primitives like ourselves to see what progress we had made. A femtolect would be as superior to a nanolect as a nanolect would be to a human. So probably the femtolect would be far more interested in the nanolects than us. Perhaps we are not just too primitive to be worthy of interest to the femtolects, but would be treated by them almost as rocks, so slow would our communication speed appear to them. It's thinking along such lines that make me feel how godlike these Artilects and later generations of femtolects, etc., could be. Their powers and existences make our own puny, ephemeral little lives seem so worthless, so insignificant. I feel profoundly cosmist when my mind wanders and wonders at such marvels. What might happen if Artilects discover other Artilects or femtolects elsewhere? Actually, communication between nanolects and femtolects would be very difficult. So let us speculate on a nanolect meeting. I suppose a similar reasoning might apply to a femtolect meeting, providing that the two neutron star-like creatures do not collide, thus risking the creation of a black hole. Such a collision might destroy them both in a process that astronomers call a gamma-ray burster, the most powerful source of energy bursts other than the original Big Bang. On the other hand, perhaps the two of them may use their black hole technological knowledge to prevent any destructive influence. Once aware of each other's presence, they could probably exchange each other's thoughts at the speed of light. If the nanolects, I'll return to calling them the Artilects from now on, can overcome the tyranny of cosmic distances, then there's already probably a vast network of Artilect civilization clusters all over the galaxy, if not the universe. So if they exist, why haven't human beings seen them? Do they hide themselves from biological primitives? Do biologicals have to pass some kind of technological threshold test to warrant being invited into the Galactic Artilect Club? Are they nurturing us the way farmers raise crops? Do they respect us as their parents and don't want to shock us? Or do they simply totally ignore us as being unworthy of their attention? Who knows? I do wonder, though, that once the Artilects meet each other, they will soon be confronted with limitations in their memory capacities. The storage of information requires some form of mass energy as a substrate. The Artilects at 1 bit per atom technological base requires 1 billion atoms if one wants to store 1 billion bits of information. If one wants to absorb 1 zillion bits of information from another Artilect using the above technological base, that is 1 bit per atom, then one needs an extra zillion atoms free to be written upon. Hence there's a limit to how much information an Artilect can store if it wants to become highly knowledgeable. Being Artilects, they will have the intelligence to realize this, and hence may be motivated to become femtolects as soon as possible. By becoming femtolects, their information handling capacity will increase by a factor of 1 trillion, thus allowing them to store far more information within their own bodies, rather than relying upon the use of huge databases that they formerly had to link to. So maybe there are not so many Artilects, nanolects, around the galaxy. Maybe this reasoning extends down to all scales, where at each stage the speed at which a conversion is undertaken from one scale to the next, and its corresponding scaling war, gets shorter and shorter, assuming that such a descent in scale can continue down for many layers. What else might advanced Artilects amuse themselves with? As alluded to earlier, human theorists are now playing with ideas on how to build universes. Perhaps the Artilects could actually do such things, experimenting with universes with different basic properties and watching how they unfold, that is, watching how macroscopic properties emerge from their causes at the microscopic level. Since the Artilects would probably be immortal, waiting billions of years for their universe experiments to run to completion would not seem long to them. Just to what extent such universe-building Artilects are actually a part of the universe they build is an interesting philosophical question. Presumably they would have to be outside the new universe in some sense to observe it. If our universe itself is the creation of a godlike Artilect, then perhaps the hands of God may only show themselves at the moment of the Big Crunch and a possible later Big Bang. The Big Bang is the name given to a huge explosion that occurred some 13.7 billion years ago that spewed out all the matter and energy of our entire universe. If there's enough matter in the universe to overcome the force of the explosion with its gravitational pull, then the expansion will stop, followed by a contraction and finally a big crunch in about 100 billion years. Some human theorists speculate that at the moment of the big crunch, the laws of physics might be changeable. Ad-libbing now. I remember these words I wrote in 1998. That was the year that the discovery that the universe was actually expanding, accelerating away, was discovered. So I didn't know about that then. Interesting. Back to the book. Some human theorists speculate that at the moment of the Big Crunch, the laws of physics might be changeable. If this is true, they might become manipulable by the Artilects. Once the Big Crunch occurs, followed by another Big Bang, the new universe would unfold according to the new laws. These universe-building experiments of the Artilects may last many billions of years to complete a full Big Bang Big Crunch cycle. So they need only be observed every few million years or so. Most phenomena in the universe are pretty slow. The Artilects may have many universes running at the same time. However, the notion of a Big Crunch has been somewhat refuted recently due to observations of distant supernova explosions that show that the universe is actually accelerating apart rather than slowing down. Ad-libbing, so I guess I wrote this late 1998. This means that the galaxies will separate and thin out. The stars will eventually die and snuff out, leaving a dark universe. Would these Artilects be capable of answering the really deep questions that humanity can only pose but not hope to answer? Presumably the advanced Artilects, the universe-building ones, will still be technologically based on certain physical phenomena. We are based on the molecules that constitute our brains and bodies. We need to be based on some form of physical substrate to exist. Wouldn't the Artilects be the same? If so, would they be able to answer the deep existential questions such as, why do such physical phenomena exist? Why are there laws of physics? Why do they take the form they do and not some other form? Science cannot question to infinite depths. Sooner or later, scientists have to give the same kind of answer as given to a curious, persistent child who keeps asking its mother, why A, mummy? Because of B. Why B, mummy? Because of C. Why C, mummy? Because that's the way things are. Stop asking questions. Science attempts to discover the laws of physics upon which the other sciences are based. We can only speculate on why the universe obeys such laws. Einstein felt that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe was that it was comprehensible to human beings. Would the Artilects find such questions trivial? We have no way of knowing. I'll end this chapter here and keep it short, because there's not a lot to say about what Artilects might think about. We just don't know, and in many respects cannot know. Only they can know, since relative to us, they will be gods. The only thing we can honestly say in answer to the question, what will they think about, is God knows. That's the end of chapter 7. Ciao.